New digital scan of the Titanic, insight into the ship's final moment.
A digital scan created from more than 700,000 underwater images now shows us the complete wreck.
Creating this scientifically accurate model is one of the team's core objectives.
In total, 37 terabytes of data. But to see what they've got...
Scientists just shattered everything we thought we knew about the Titanic. In 2025, they unleashed powerful AI to digitally resurrect the entire wreck. And what it revealed shocked the world.
Titanic is unique. It is dominated by bacteria. Under the microscope, the features in them are extremely detailed.
For over a century, we've been telling the wrong story. The iceberg, that was just the opening act.
Titanic struck the iceberg a glancing blow along the starboard side, and as the ship sank, just at the point where it was about ready to stabilize,
The real villain was hiding in plain sight, buried in the ship's own bones. What AI discovered in those frozen depths proves the Titanic was doomed before it ever left port. The evidence is damning. The implications are terrifying. And the people who built it, they knew. By the end of this video, you'll never look at the unsinkable ship the same way again. This is the true story of how the greatest maritime disaster in history was designed to fail. The Titanic wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of human progress, luxury, and the kind of confidence that makes you believe you've conquered nature itself. When it set sail from Southampton on April 10, 1912, it carried more than passengers and cargo. It carried the weight of a civilization, convinced it had outsmarted the ocean. 4 days later, that illusion shattered as over 1,500 lives vanished beneath the icy waters of the North Atlantic.
The Titanic has been hidden in darkness at the bottom of the Atlantic.
But what followed was just as enduring as the tragedy itself, a mystery that refused to die. From the moment survivors reached New York aboard the RMS Carpathia, people began asking questions that no one could definitively answer. How did it happen? Why wasn't it prevented? What exactly went wrong beneath the surface? Sure, official investigations were conducted, reports were written, testimonies were given, but the deeper mechanical truths remained shrouded in confusion, speculation, and myth. The official story, we were told, was simple enough to satisfy a simple world. A massive gash tore the hull open like a can. Big ship hits big iceberg, gets big hole, sinks. It was dramatic. It was terrifying. And as we now know, it was wrong. Even in 1912, that version didn't sit well with some engineers and maritime experts. The Titanic was divided into 16 supposedly watertight compartments, designed to float with up to 4 of them flooded. So how did a single iceberg cause so much damage so fast? Over the decades, alternative theories took shape. Some believed the steel used to build the Titanic was brittle and shattered upon impact. Others suspected the rivets were of poor quality, snapping under stress like dry twigs. Still others proposed that human error and poor judgment, from the speed of the ship to the location of the iceberg warnings, were the real culprits. Then came the discovery that changed everything. In September 1985, a joint American-French expedition, led by Dr. Robert Ballard, finally found the wreck. It rested 12,500 feet beneath the surface, split into 2 main sections, and scattered across the sea floor like a graveyard frozen in time. Cameras captured eerie images of railings, teacups, and bed frames suspended in the deep. For the first time, the world saw the ghost of the great ship. And yet, even with video evidence, the mystery deepened. How exactly did the ship break in two? Did it split at the surface or underwater? Why were the 2 halves located nearly 600 meters apart? Why were some areas of the ship intact, while others were mangled beyond recognition. The murkiness of the water, the decay, and the sheer scale of the wreck made these questions harder to answer than anyone expected. Ballard's team provided a new theory that made waves in the maritime world. The ship hadn't suffered one long gash, but rather a series of small slits and punctures along the starboard side, enough to flood 6 compartments, 2 more than Titanic could survive. But without exact measurements and structural models, it remained just a theory. In the years that followed, more expeditions took place. Documentaries were made, artifacts were retrieved. Hollywood added its own dramatic lens in 1997 with James Cameron's Titanic, reigniting global obsession. But still, the mechanical truth remained incomplete. We knew pieces of the puzzle, but not how they fit together. Part of the reason for this persistent mystery was technological. At nearly 2.5 miles deep, the Titanic rests in one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth. Pressure exceeds 6,000 pounds per square inch. Darkness is absolute. Water is near freezing. Exploring the wreck requires state-of-the-art submersibles, robotic arms, and sonar, all expensive, all limited. Even with thousands of images and hours of footage, the data was too massive and fragmented to be analyzed by human eyes alone. For years, scientists were looking at the Titanic through a keyhole. What they needed was a door, and in 2025, they finally opened it. It started not in the depths of the Atlantic, but in data centers, where machine learning, 3D imaging, and computational modeling quietly intersected to create a revolution. Digital twin technology. In simple terms, a digital twin is a perfect virtual replica of a physical object, down to the tiniest detail. But in practice, it's something far more powerful. It's the ability to see inside something that cannot be touched, turned over, or taken apart. For decades, engineers used digital twins to simulate aircraft, engines, or buildings. But in 2025, scientists applied it to the RMS Titanic, and that changed everything. The Titanic lies about 12,500 feet beneath the ocean's surface, crushed by pressure, buried in silt, and decaying more with every passing year. Divers and remotely operated vehicles had captured hundreds of hours of footage over the decades, but no single expedition had ever completely scanned the wreck, let alone in full high-resolution detail. That changed when a UK-based deep-sea mapping company partnered with marine archaeologists and AI developers to launch the most ambitious Titanic expedition in history. Their mission? To scan every inch of the wreck site using next-generation sonar and photogrammetry. The team spent 6 weeks at sea, with submersibles equipped with laser scanners, sonar, and 4K imaging systems. The result was staggering. Over 700,000 individual images from multiple angles, stitched together into the most detailed visual record ever created. We're talking 16 terabytes of raw data. And while that alone was groundbreaking, it was only step one. The real magic happened once artificial intelligence stepped in. Traditional 3D models are static visual references, but a digital twin is dynamic. It can be manipulated, tested, simulated, and analyzed in ways no real-world object can withstand. For Titanic, this meant engineers could zoom into the smallest rivet, simulate how sections buckled under pressure, measure hull fractures, reconstruct flooding timelines, and match artifacts to passenger locations using cabin blueprints. All of this was done not in the ocean, but in a computer. And the engine behind it all? Artificial intelligence. No human could manually review 700,000 images of the Titanic, nor catalogue every inch of a 269-meter ship resting in fragments across a half-mile of sea floor. But AI could. Advanced neural networks were trained to identify every feature, from hull plates and portholes to lifeboat davits and brass fittings. Where sonar returns were fuzzy, AI used probabilistic modeling. Where lighting obscured detail, machine learning filled gaps using nearby reference points. In effect, the AI created the most faithful digital resurrection ever attempted. And because it wasn't limited by fatigue, emotion, or human error, it saw what we'd missed. It detected structural failures invisible to the human eye, patterns in metal fatigue, compression lines hinting at internal stress fractures. It identified warping patterns showing exactly how the stern twisted and folded before detaching from the bow. This wasn't just modeling, it was forensics, and the wreck became the witness. For historians and engineers, the Titanic digital twin
primary stockholders, Premier Titanic, are gonna do
was like unlocking a time capsule. They could simulate the moment of impact, adjust variables like speed and angle, virtually rewind the ship's collapse, and observe how long each compartment withstood flooding. Most stunning of all, the AI answered a critical question that had eluded experts for over a century. Did the ship break apart at the surface or underwater? By studying pressure fractures and metal deformation precisely measured by the digital twin, researchers could say with confidence that the Titanic broke on the surface, as survivors described, but in a far more complex sequence than anyone realized. This wasn't guesswork, it was precision. The AI didn't just confirm what we thought we knew, it revealed something that sent shockwaves through the maritime world. The starboard hull, the side that hit the iceberg, had remained partially buried in sediment for over 100 years, nearly impossible to study directly. But with overlapping image data and depth readings, AI mathematically interpolated the hull's full geometry. And what it revealed was shocking. There was no giant gash. Instead, the hull showed a series of small, narrow fractures, barely a few feet long, running along riveted seams. This confirmed what survivor accounts suggested and what metallurgists long suspected. The Titanic didn't tear apart like paper. It unzipped, quietly and fatally. The AI didn't stop with the exterior. It created an internal schematic by overlaying 3D data with original blueprints and engineering diagrams. Researchers could now walk through Titanic's virtual corridors, seeing how each room collapsed, shifted, or stayed intact. In the engine room, AI analysis showed signs of intentional valve manipulations, evidence that engineers stayed at their posts, trying to maintain power and delay the sinking. In the grand staircase, warped beams revealed how support columns twisted under stress before snapping. AI even identified the precise moment the keel fractured, the death blow that led to the stern detaching. It used deformation analysis and stress modeling to simulate how the ship's spine buckled under its own weight as the bow sank faster than the stern. The ship wasn't just sinking, it was tearing itself apart in mechanical agony. Armed with the complete digital twin, researchers ran AI-driven simulations from iceberg impact to final plunge. These simulations didn't just animate what happened, they showed why it happened, down to the second. By inputting Titanic's speed, the strike angle, water temperature, and internal layout, AI demonstrated the exact order compartments filled. It revealed the collision damaged 6 compartments, not 4 as originally estimated, overwhelming the ship's buoyancy design. It also explained a long-debated mystery about why the lights stayed on until moments before the stern vanished. AI simulations showed power systems were rerouted through still functional circuitry, made possible by engineering heroics and design redundancies nobody fully appreciated until now. Even more astonishing, AI simulations recreated the breakup sequence with such precision that researchers could overlay survivor testimonies, some of which had been dismissed for decades, and see that they were telling the truth all along. One example that'll blow your mind. Several survivors reported seeing the stern rise nearly vertical, pause, and then twist before disappearing. Some experts once thought this was implausible, but I proved it was not only possible, it was exactly what happened. Perhaps AI's greatest contribution was its lack of sentimentality. Unlike historians or filmmakers, it wasn't looking to tell a dramatic story. It wasn't bound by assumptions, biases, or legacy theories. It didn't care whether Titanic's demise made for a good story. It just looked at the data and followed it. And what it found wasn't a tale of hubris punished by nature. It was something far more disturbing. In 2025, AI delivered a precise, evidence-backed answer that sent shockwaves through the maritime world. The Titanic was doomed by a chain reaction of structural flaws that were invisible at the surface until it was too late. The verdict wasn't a wild theory or a reinterpretation of survivor testimonies. It was rooted in physics, metallurgy, and fluid dynamics, all fused together in the most detailed simulation ever created. And for the first time, it revealed exactly how the Titanic broke and why it was never going to survive its maiden voyage once disaster struck. AI confirmed what has long been known. The Titanic struck an iceberg at approximately 11:40 p.m. on April 14, 1912. The collision caused ruptures in 5 of the ship's 16 watertight compartments. But the digital reconstruction revealed something more alarming. The damage pattern didn't align with earlier assumptions of a long gash. Instead, multiple small puncture holes and buckled plates across several forward compartments allowed seawater to pour in faster than previously thought. In short, the iceberg didn't tear a massive wound. It exploited weaknesses in the rivets and steel, creating pressure points that caused rapid flooding. Within just 10 minutes, AI showed the Titanic's fate was sealed. But here's where things get really disturbing. One of the most shocking conclusions from the AI simulation was about the Titanic's steel. Using metallurgical data collected from the actual wreck site and comparing it with modern analysis, the AI determined that the ship's hull plates contained high levels of sulfur and phosphorus, elements that make steel brittle, especially in cold temperatures. In the 28-degree Fahrenheit waters of the North Atlantic, the Titanic's hull was dangerously fragile. When the iceberg struck, the steel didn't flex, it fractured. The AI's high-speed simulation showed the metal cracking in slow motion, a phenomenon known as brittle fracture. Instead of absorbing the impact and staying watertight, the hull broke open like glass. The Titanic was not only vulnerable, it was already breaking from the inside out. What happened next was a deadly domino effect. As the forward compartments filled, the bow began to sink. AI revealed that the watertight bulkheads were not sealed at the top, allowing water to spill over into adjacent compartments like a cascading waterfall. Survivors had long mentioned this behavior, but now, for the first time, it was modeled and confirmed. Then came the fatal twist. Around 2:18 a.m., just before the ship snapped in two, the simulation showed an intense strain on the keel, the ship's backbone. The steel could not handle the forces created by the rising stern and sinking bow. In a matter of seconds, the Titanic's midsection buckled and fractured, leading to the dramatic breakup. This moment had been debated for decades. Some believed the ship sank intact, while others pointed to eyewitness accounts of a breakup. AI ended the debate once and for all. Not only did the ship break apart, it had no chance of holding together under the combined forces of structural stress, water pressure, and flawed construction. Perhaps the most humbling takeaway was what AI revealed about the ship's rivets, the metal pins that held the Titanic together. These rivets, especially those in the bow, were made from substandard iron, not the stronger steel used elsewhere. The builders had run short of high-grade rivets and substituted lower-quality materials in some sections, especially near the front. Under impact, these weaker rivets popped like buttons, allowing seams to burst open. This detail had been theorized before, but AI confirmed it with chilling clarity. Using digital twin replication, engineers simulated the impact forces and saw how thousands of tiny rivets failed almost simultaneously. The ship, built to be unsinkable, had been compromised by cost-cutting decisions and human pride. AI also answered another long-standing question that haunted survivors and historians alike. Could more lives have been saved? Yes and no. The ship's design flaws, lack of adequate lifeboats, poor emergency protocol, and overconfidence by the crew all played a role. But AI showed that once the ship's bow began to flood, the window for effective evacuation was incredibly short, less than 45 minutes before the deck began to tilt severely. Crew training was minimal, distress signals were delayed, and many passengers were still below deck when the ship began to list. AI simulations revealed that even with better lifeboat access, the panic, darkness, and freezing temperatures would have made large-scale rescue efforts nearly impossible without nearby ships. In the end, AI concluded that the Titanic sank because of a perfect storm of factors: brittle steel weakened by cold temperatures, weak rivets in critical areas, a flawed watertight bulkhead system, overconfidence in an unsinkable design, and an iceberg that struck just right or just wrong. It wasn't just bad luck, it was engineering failure, corporate compromise, and human arrogance all wrapped into one tragic voyage. The AI didn't just give us a new story, it gave us the final word. The Titanic wasn't just a victim of nature.
It told me how to find the Titanic. When the Thresher and the Scorpion imploded, and all these pieces,
It was a victim of its own myth. The unsinkable ship was built on a foundation of fatal flaws, flaws that killed 1,500 people. And when this information went public in 2025, the world's reaction was swift, emotional, and deeply divided. When news broke in early 2025 that AI had finally resolved the enduring mysteries of the Titanic's sinking, the world didn't just take notice, it erupted. From social media threads to international news panels, documentaries to dinner table debates, the public reaction was electric. The Titanic, long held in cultural memory as both a tragedy and a symbol of human ambition, had been reborn through technology. And with this digital resurrection came a wave of emotion, curiosity, skepticism, and even rage. The first wave of reaction was one of pure awe. Millions viewed the AI-generated 3D simulations within days of their release. The detail was breathtaking. Rusted deck railings, collapsed staircases, scattered personal belongings, all reconstructed with eerie precision. It felt less like watching a model and more like standing aboard the Titanic itself, walking through its final moments, frozen in digital clarity. People across generations, from schoolchildren learning about the tragedy for the first time to elderly descendants of survivors, expressed an overwhelming sense of emotional connection. For many, it wasn't just about the Titanic anymore.
Titanic clearly would have passed on its way to the big monster iceberg.
It was about what AI could do for other historical enigmas, from Amelia Earhart's final flight to ancient sunken cities in the Mediterranean. The technology offered more than answers. It gave a sense of time travel, of standing in the past and finally understanding it. A particularly emotional aspect of the public response came from descendants of Titanic passengers and crew. For over a century, families had carried incomplete stories, rumors of heroism, questions about final moments, speculation about what their ancestors saw, did, or endured. With the AI-generated simulations and revised sequence of events, many felt a new kind of closure. Some found validation. Accounts of lifeboat delays or ignored warnings were confirmed with striking clarity. Stories dismissed for decades were finally vindicated by cold, hard data. For these families, the AI breakthrough wasn't just scientific progress, it was personal, but not everyone celebrated. Some scholars questioned the reliance on AI-generated conclusions, pointing out that no algorithm is immune to data bias. If flawed survivor testimonies or inaccurate sonar readings were used, the results could mislead rather than clarify. A few even warned against romanticizing digital reconstructions, arguing that they can sometimes sanitize tragedy or lead to false emotional certainty. Ironically, the release of a seemingly definitive account didn't silence all doubters. It galvanized them. A subset of Titanic conspiracy theorists rejected the AI findings outright, insisting they were part of a broader effort to erase the truth. Despite overwhelming evidence, some people need mystery more than answers. For them, accepting the AI conclusions meant letting go of decades of alternative theories, and that wasn't something they were willing to do. The ethical debates that followed were just as intense.
Titanic has their own story of seeing it for the first time, and probably the most frequently asked question to me.
Scientists now use the digital twin as a living research tool to study corrosion and explore material science in extreme environments. But ethicists began asking uncomfortable questions. Should this technology influence decisions around shipwreck preservation? What about artifact recovery? Where's the line between research and grave robbing? These aren't easy questions, and they're still being debated today. But above all, AI did something unprecedented. Something no expedition, documentary, or deep-sea dive had accomplished in 113 years. It gave us a complete picture. A century-old ship, lost to the sea, rendered in vivid digital clarity. Its tragedy laid bare, not by storytellers or survivors, but by pure, unblinking data. The Titanic mystery is solved, but it opened a door to countless other historical investigations. I can now examine any wreck, any artifact, any mystery with precision humans never could. This is just the beginning of what technology can reveal about our past. And the most haunting part, it's not what AI told us. It's how much we already knew but could never prove. The warnings were there. The design flaws were documented. The compromises were made in boardrooms and shipyards long before the Titanic ever touched water. And 1,500 people paid the price for decisions made by men who valued luxury over safety, profit over lives, and confidence over caution. In 2025, we finally know the truth. The Titanic wasn't defeated by an iceberg. It was defeated by human arrogance, by corners cut in the name of elegance, by a myth of invincibility that blinded builders to fatal flaws lurking in every rivet, every plate, every inch of that doomed hull. The ship they called unsinkable was doomed before it ever left port. And now, 113 years later, artificial intelligence has given us the proof we needed but never wanted. The question is, what will we do with it?